Olin Browne is joining us today. He's won 9 times amongst the professional ranks, 3 times on the PGA Tour, another 2 times on the PGA Tour Champions. 890, you heard me right, tour starts collectively, and 102 of those times he had career top 10s. Pretty good percentage. He was also part of the coaching staff in 2008, the victorious United States Ryder Cup team under the helm of Captain Paul Azinger. On the European side, joined by one of my best friends in the world, Raymond Burns is joining us. Raymond, DP World Tour analyst. He does radio, he does television. I broadcast with him all over the globe. He also will be a part of the Sirius XM broadcast live coverage of the Ryder Cup coming up. He's won 2 times amongst the professional ranks, 120 starts on the European Tour. He's the director of golf at Malahide, which is outside of Dublin, Ireland. He was a member of the 1993 Walker Cup team for GB&I, and all those Walker Cup teams always have great players on them that go on to prominence. One of his teammates was a 3-time major champion in Padre Harrington. So, Ramey, if you can, let's start with you in Dublin this morning. First of all, welcome to the program. Good afternoon to you, and thank you for your time. Your reaction to the 6 captains picks overall, if I may, from Luke Donald.
Hey, I think I felt bad for Matt Wallace, but I understood the reasons why he went for Matt Fitzpatrick or John Rahm. Probably John Rahm was already a shoe-in. I think he went for experience. I think the fact that you have 11 of these players that won in Italy, and he's bringing 11 of them over to the United States with the experience that they have, I think was quite there was the way the players played all year, I suppose. But I think it's an advantage, the fact that they're leaving with that feeling of winning in Italy and going to Bethpage in a few weeks' time. I think he's been smart about his picks. Luke Donald, as we all know, is an extremely, he's a very, very smart thinker. He knows what he's doing. He wouldn't have been my Ryder Cup captain, 3-4 years ago when he was chosen. He sort of fell into it by some of the live players moving on in that regard. But I like the team. A few months ago, I thought the Americans were, in that regard, the American team was extremely strong. But when I look at both teams and I look at the stats that Dominic and yourself have shown, I mean, it looks very like 14-14. That would be a good result for the European side. But the experience that we're having on the European side and the way that, Justin Rose, Tommy Fleetwood, that type of players have been playing in the FedEx coming down the season. Shane Lowry, obviously hanging in there, Steph Straka, Victor Hovland, Ludwig Oberg. It's a very strong European team. I've been going to Ryder Cup since 1989, and sometimes the European side have had to rely on maybe 6 or 7 or 8 players, and we've always been bringing, and no disregard against any of the players, but we've always been bringing sort of, maybe non-American PGA Tour players that hadn't played there with us to the United States. But this time around, I think Europe are bringing a really, really strong team to a really, really strong venue to play against a phenomenal team. And my feelings about the captain, Keegan Bradley. He's been one of my favourite golfers and favourite people over the last 15, 20 years. I just love the way the guy's passion, etc. And I know he will have every stone. There'll be every stone. He'll make sure that everything that he has got for his team and for his players and for his captains, and it'll be phenomenal. So it's looking good. It wasn't looking that way in my eyes a few months ago, but 3 weeks before I fly to the Big Apple, looking so forward to Bethpage, looking so forward to New York, the golf course, the atmosphere. We always think that, Paris was brilliant. We think Medina was brilliant. We thought Italy was brilliant. We didn't get a chance, unfortunately, with Whistling Straits. We couldn't travel. But this Ryder Cup is looking at, it could be one of the best, the greatest, go to one of the greatest venues in the world of golf. I've never been to Bethpage. I can't wait to set foot. It's like touching a Monet. You're like going to Rome, the Rome of golf, the sort of the Colosseum, and I can't wait to get there. And truthfully, I'm partisan to Europe, but if I see good golf and I see golf played in the correct fashion and the way it was played in Italy, You know, I know the New York crowds and all, you hear all these stories, etc. But that's golf, that's passion, and I want to see passion. And if you want to be the best, beat the best, you have to play against the best. And you know, I just think I think we're in for probably one of the world's greatest sporting occasions ever in history of sport, including golf, obviously.
Well, there you go. Ramey has set the table for us, and you give me about a million different directions to go with you. But first, I'm going to bring in Olin and say good day to him. And Olin, we now know on both sides who the 12 men will be that will go into Bethpage Black. With a broad brush, if I may start with you, your impressions of the two teams respectively.
Well, good morning, guys. It's great to be with you this morning. There's a lot to absorb here, isn't there? And I think Raymond points out so well that, the team building process takes on different iterations. And, you could feel one way about the team at one point and another way entirely about the team as it settles. The captains have both extraordinary picks. The game, truthfully, is really hard to break down in this day and age because it's not Europe versus the U.S. It's global golf. And all of these guys have been exposed to the world stage for the last however long it is. And there aren't going to be any shrinking violets. There are a lot of big game hunters coming out, Bethpage, and it's a game hunter's paradise. It's an incredible golf course. I think weather is going to play a vital role in what happens there and captain's decisions. Of course, if the course is cooked, running is going to play. And if it gets damp, it can get cold in a hurry. It's going to play another entirely. So there's going to be a lot of variety. But both teams are exceedingly strong. You've got essentially the very, very best golfers in the world playing one against the other and in a 12-man team format. And I think it's going to truly excite.
All right, so as we continue here on the Fairways of Life, folks, I want to start to break down some of the things that both of these men just mentioned to us. First of all, to some of the comments that Raymond meant. The primary one that stood out to me was when he mentioned the New York crowds, because I want to get a perspective from the European side, what they're thinking about the galleries at New York and how passionate they're going to be and how involved they're going to be. Luke Donald keeps talking about preparing the team for that. How do you prepare the team for the New York crowd? I want to go down that road. And on the United States side, where I want to pick up with Olin when we come back, is the question of Luke Donald is on the European side. His team's complete. On the American side, we have Keegan Bradley. And when Keegan Bradley was named the captain of the U.S. Ryder Cup team, we were led to believe that he was an agent of change, that his captaincy and his age and maybe being a playing captain, maybe not, and all these factors that we've been dealing with and hearing about for months and months and months since his appointment were a sign that the U.S. Ryder Cup team was going in a different direction. When we look at the team that is complete now and those that he picked, it didn't look so much like he went in a different direction. He kind of went in the direction, if I may, of the tried and true. Olin Browne was a vice captain of the 2008 successful United States Ryder Cup team. Olin, I'm going to hit you with the question. You heard me talking about it earlier in the show. 3-8 since 2002 for Team USA. 3-8. Why?
How on this show to go over that? I mean, I think first of all, we all have visceral reactions to outcomes. So if something doesn't go on it, we want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, start all over again. I'm a fan of the force concept. Task force to me is like kind of like an all-encompassing term that means that you're looking for ideas, but you don't have direction. I think the best kind of captaincy is what establishes parameters and an seeks to fulfill that. I think that's what great captains do. It's what great coaches do. Yeah, Bill Belichick, notwithstanding what happened to him last night, how to go about assembling a team, and it's not always how the rest of us perceive it, right? And I think that we get, especially when there's something new on the horizon, for example, stats, analytics, and all that stuff. I think that has a place, but they're all related to another, and as the saying goes, there are lies, there are damn lies, and there are statistics. I think that is so important, and it's a great captain establishes a pro, brings in people who can help him with that vision or her, and then assigns players to certain roles. And the human element, I think, has so much more value. For example, Keegan Bradley is a very emotional guy. I mean, in a positive way, he exudes positivity. He's going to rely a lot on team leadership to help him organize his team, his vice captains, and so forth, in a way that puts everybody at ease and in a place where they feel confident to go out and excel. And so I think that we get mired in trying to figure out every little nook and cranny of every single situation, when really, in fact, you got to have vision and you got to have a plan and you got to be able to implement your plan. And I think that's what great coaching, great captaincies bring to team dynamics.
So, Raymond, when you hear Olin talk about a vision, a plan, and of course the execution of that respective plan, do you agree with him that we could talk about stats all we want to? We could talk about, the U.S. team coming in as they have with better world rankings, et cetera, but all of that kind of goes out the window when the competition actually starts. How do you feel that the European team is able to amass the record that they have, 8-3 since 2002, despite all of the other trappings that sit on the periphery?
I think it adds to a lot of things that Olin says in regards to maybe the structure of the European side and their strategy that they've been accustomed to over, say, since 2002. They've developed that sort of team bond. The captains have understood each of the individual players, and the players themselves have been able to change positions very quickly at any time. You haven't really been dealing with, when I say superstars, I don't mean to put any USA players down in any way or any form of past tournaments, but it's very hard to drop certain number one players or number two players off a team. But I think Paul McGill in the Glen Eagles, he had a certain role that Graham McDowell played, with the French golfer. I just can't think of his name right now. It's very hard to accept that if you're a top player. And I think the European team have been more involved from a team perspective as an individual, perspective over the last 10, 20, 23 years. And I think that showed a lot. And another thing I'd say as well, here in Europe, we play a huge amount of, country golf, European team championships, Irish team championships, England, Wales, all around the whole of Europe. And we're very accustomed to foursomes golf from a very young age. We're very accustomed to four ball. Obviously singles wouldn't be our strongest point, although we've done really well as a European team in singles in the last few years. But I think if you add all those things together, we've been playing golf. These teams have been playing golf together as a sort of since they were 12, 13, 15 years old. They're very used to one another. And I think the captains have definitely went out and sought information for, whether it's soccer, managers, Alex Ferguson, I know, helped Paul McGinley. I know certain Luke Donald has went to certain football managers, and asked, how do I get the team performance? And I think Europe have been very good at getting the overall team. Like Europe, 25 years ago, we really played 8 players all the time. But now we can rest players, we can throw players aside. I'm sure Shane Larry would love to play 5 games, but Shane probably knows he's only going to play 3 games. Rory McIlroy might play 5 games. John Ram might play 5 games. So everybody sort of understands their role. The captain sort of gives out that from the very, probably 6 months ago, he set a stall. They know exactly where they're going, what they're doing. And there's very little, Matt, as you know yourself. You go to many of these championships, and it's down to putting, it's down to a roll of a dice, a roll of a ball. It's very close call, but it does seem to me that over the last while, the task force thing, of course, that's something I thought that was nuts, to be honest. You have the 12 greatest players in the world going to play golf, and you need a task force. Like, I mean, Tiger Woods needing a task force, or you just go and play your golf, and you play with your friend, and you go out and you try and have the best score you have. And I think that's a very, and I think Keegan Bradley will know that, and the way he spoke at his press conference when he picked out his players, I saw a really experienced CEO, the way he spoke about his players, the passion he had when he named his players. And I thought it was like, judging from a sort of a perspective of psychology, he knew exactly what he was doing. He seemed to be in true, everything that he said he meant. And that's a massive start, in my opinion. He's already shown, that he's a gladiator in that stage when he speaks like that. And maybe this is the change that USA needed. You'll know in a few weeks' time, but I do think Europe definitely holds the candle in regards to team motivation and team strategy, team structure.
So, Olin, when let's picking up on what Raymond was just talking about with the announcements made by Keegan Bradley. You already made your initial comments about the strength of his team, but did it surprise you in any way? Was this exactly what you expected of Keegan Bradley, or did you expect it to be more, for lack of a better phrase, more of an agent of change?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a limitation to this agent of change. I mean, the team is, I would suggest, keep looking at the next 14 or got to the initial group had qualified in order to make his picks. And so, the idea of who's going to be on the team is fairly well defined. And what you're trying to find is compatibility there, right? I thought that could have been a case made for Lucas Glover, since he won the Open at Bethpage. And he's pretty consistent golf. He's a beautiful ball striker and so forth. But, Keegan's picks didn't surprise me one bit. And I know that we're going to touch on whether or not he should have been a pick himself. And I'll save that for when you want to broach that subject. But I thought that he went fairly chalk. He got 2 rookies on the team. He picked 2 rookies. Zinger, when in 2008, picked 6 rookies on the team. I think this experience thing, there's an old adage about experience being something you get when you don't get what you want. It doesn't always work out in your favor to have guys who have been, selected for teams over the years. It's emotionally, physically draining to some of the, representing your country, honor you can possibly have. Do it every single year, President Ryder Cup. I think it can be exhausting. So sometimes, fresh players can bring perspective and different levels of enthusiasm and a whole bunch of different characteristics to the team that make the team more productive. Coach Belichick famously got rid of players when he was in New England a year before they were ready to go than a year later. And so there was this constant evolution of fresh mindsets and fresh enthusiasm and fresh physical play that came into his teams, and it kept things very, very competitive. And I think both coaches, both captains understand this clearly. They're not afraid to have younger guys or newer guys on their squads.
All right, you can hear Olin's signal to us is breaking up just a little bit, but the content is too good to not continue down this road. You talked about Keegan picking himself, whether he should have or shouldn't have, and said, when we're ready to discuss it, let's go, let's discuss it. Did you want to see Keegan Bradley on that team as a playing captain?
That's only a decision the captain makes. I know that it's kind of fairly split because he's played so beautifully, and there are a lot of people who feel that he was passed over last time. The captain's job, the last playing captain for the U.S. side, I believe, Arnold Palmer. And the world has changed since then. There's There's more to it. There's much press on that. I mean, those days, the team's a little lopsided, and so a whole lot that needed.
Olin, I'm going to jump in just because it's breaking up to a point that we're losing you here. Raymond, let me jump back to you if I can, because we're losing Olin there and losing what he was trying to express to us. We'll get back if he can get his signal a little bit stronger wherever he's set up. Looks like maybe a hotel room or something. Ramey, on the European side, Rory came out and said that Keegan shouldn't do it, that it's too much, etc. But there was this sense that from the European side, they really wanted Keegan Bradley to do it. They wanted him to try to take on both roles. Maybe they thought of it as some kind of a distraction. I'm not sure what the motivation was. So I ask you, what was the motivation? Why was Europe so eager that Keegan Bradley should do something that would be in the modern edition of the Ryder Cup historic?
I think it was a difficult decision for Keegan Bradley to make. He probably thought, I was given this opportunity to be captain of, a Ryder Cup team. I'm playing so well. Personally, I would have picked myself. I would have said, I didn't get the chance last time. I'm picking myself this time. I think he's playing well enough to be on the team. He would definitely make the European team. That's for certain. And I think the Europeans were actually quite happy that he didn't pick himself. But at the same time, if he had picked himself, I think Keegan probably played this one the last couple of months, because the whole story, as we all know, in Port Royal and before that, the US Open was all about is Keegan Bradley going to pick himself? So he sort of the reflection was taken off him in that regard about the actual Ryder Cup itself. So it probably suited him, all the talking about who he's going to pick or what he's going to pick. So I was surprised he didn't pick himself. I honestly thought, if it was a betting man, I definitely thought he was going to pick himself. But back to where I think Olin was trying to say about Arnold Palmer, I think in 1963, when he played as a Ryder Cup captain. The world has changed since then. There's so many things involved in being a Ryder Cup captain. I know from Padraig Harrington's experience, because Padraig had to wait another year to the Ryder Cup. So he was his captaincy announcement to when he actually captained probably was a little bit too long in his mind. And I do think that when you have so many functions to go to, so many dinners to go to, so many things, that the Ryder Cup now is such a big showcase event. It'd be very difficult, I think, for Keegan to be able to do both. I know Tiger Woods did both the President's Cup at Royal Melbourne. I know Fred Couples came in for him, and they won whatever. It mightn't be a big reflection on the team, but at a Ryder Cup, I think he probably done what he thought best for the team and some of the players that were playing, and he wanted them to play in the team. It was a very close call for 11 and 12 on the USA team. So I do think that he done the right thing, but at the same time, Rory coming out with that little jibe, I do think he sort of he was sort of playing along, maybe with a little bit of mind stuff already. So we'll see how that works out in a few weeks' time.
This is the question that I've been asking right from the start. When Keegan did his press conference and said, no, we've known for some time that I wasn't going to be a playing captain, I'm thinking to myself, is he one of the great geniuses already? Because you heard Olin. Olin kept bringing up Coach Belichick, right, when he was with the Pats. And Belichick was great, by all accounts, at diminishing the so-called noise, at pushing that noise away so the players themselves could concentrate on their respective jobs individually and collectively. Is that what Keegan Bradley just did? Because if he knew that he wasn't...
I think so.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If he knew he wasn't going to play, he could have said that, but instead he did this cat and mouse with the media and thus with the world of golf, where everyone was commenting if he should play or shouldn't play, and that was the whole focus of everything that was going on. And then he ended up saying at his press conference, no, I'm not playing, and I've known that I'm not playing for some time. Dom, I'm going to bring you in here real quickly before we run out of time with these guys. Just give me a question or two that you've got coming in from the folks out there, and let's see what our experts have to say respectively. And guys, you can log on to our Fairways of Life YouTube page if you'd like to try to weigh in on it or engage in the discussion board that is going crazy right now, no doubt.
There's a lot of great stuff coming in, but I'll read a couple notes here. Kevin writes, the teams have been selected. Let's just play. There are no mistakes made by either captain, only players who don't execute the captain's game plan, which is interesting, putting the onus a little bit on sort of just straight up play. One question coming in is that the claim is made that Bethpage is a ball striker's course. Burns was picked, I think, mainly Sam Burns for the U.S. team for his putting. He's literally number one in the tour in strokes gained putting right now. Is that a good fit for Bethpage to lean into getting a pick because of putting, not so much ball striking? I know, Olin Browne mentioned earlier he thought Lucas Glover might be an ideal fit, perhaps for the same reasons. What say you guys?
Well, opposite reasons in that case between Lucas Glover and Sam Burns. But in foursomes, you can look for that kind of stuff. Olin, let me go back to you just for a second here. Hopefully everything will connect. You've been talking a lot about team dynamics in roles in the captain, respectively. Let me ask you straight up, because you were a part of a winning United States Ryder Cup team, of which there's only been 3, going all the way back to 2002. What role, how significant a role does the captain play in whether or not his team wins?
Wow, loaded question, but I think the obvious answer is he does everything. And Raymond mentioned it earlier. There's a 2-year run-up to the Ryder Cup. And then what happens is that the captain sets the players and puts them on their course, and it's up to the players to deliver. But the captaincy is such an involved and comprehensive process. The tone can be set early and often. And what Paul Azinger did in 2008 was he split the team into smaller groups. It's well documented, the pod system and all that. The Europeans have been doing that, whether overtly or covertly, for a long time, naturally, because of cultures over there, countries and so forth. But he gave pod captains ownership of what was going on out there, and then relied on the styles of the players and the commitment of the players to carry the team through. And I don't think it's any different. I think that there's leadership at every level. You need somebody that can break the ice, who can throw the water balloons when they need to be thrown. You need somebody who can set the tone early on, and I just think that when you're assembling a team, you look at a team face value. It's not always the guy who's next in line in terms of having accrued points. It's the guy who you feel fits that team room. So it's so vitally important for the captain to set the tone. But once the Ryder Cup week starts, all of that other stuff gets set aside, and you're just trying to create and maintain the environment where the players can excel. It's all about the players.
Hey, Olin, it's Murphy's Law, isn't it, that we're at the end of the segment with you guys, and now your internet is working absolutely perfectly. We can hear you very clearly. All right, I want to hear you clearly on this next question. I want to throw it at you quickly. I'm going to do the same thing to Raymond as we say goodbye. What do you see as results at Bethpage? Put yourself on the line.
I think both teams are really strong, both of them world-class players. I think there's an undercurrent here that we haven't touched on, and that there are live guys who are part of this Ryder Cup that haven't been part of it before, and I think that they have something to prove. And I think there's going to be a lot of energy. Now, the New York crowds are off the charts, and Page is the ultimate home game for us. So if our team gets off to a good start, the crowds at Bethpage going to help carry people across the finish line. Conversely, guys don't shine, they're going to hear about it as well.
All right, so you're picking Team USA, just so we have clarity on that. Let's switch over to Raymond Burns, who's joining us live from... All right, yeah, of course. Let's switch over to Raymond Burns, who's joining us live from Dublin. Raymond, who do you have for this Ryder Cup? What is going to happen? You'll be part of the SiriusXM live radio coverage of the same. What do you got?
I can see it been very close, very tight. Home advantage is massive. I'll maybe just take USA by a very, very, very small margin.
Really? Ramey Burns has also picked Team USA to win the Ryder Cup. This is going to make news over in Europe when this comes out.
This could be a draw, but it's very, very tight. Two teams are very similar, but I think golf course advantage and fan advantage is and we all know from past Ryder Cups over here, it's huge. I don't think you can pass the home advantage. It's huge.
This is really interesting because we had a few pints over this at Port Rush, and you gave me an opposite answer. So since that time, you've changed with the teams are complete, which is understandable.
Well, I know what I'd like to see happen. I would like to see Europe win in Bethpage, and I would like to see the USA win in a Dare manner. I would like to see that.
Ramey, you continue to amaze us. Thank you very much for your time, gents. It was indeed a pleasure.